The bond announced itself at midnight. Lyra Voss felt it before she saw him. A pull in her chest, low and quiet, like something old waking up after a long sleep. She pressed her hand flat against her sternum and stood very still in the middle of the crowded hall, while 500 wolves celebrated the king's return around her. Then she looked up, and Calum Draven looked back. He was tall in the way that mountains are tall, not as a feature, but as a fact. Dark hair, a jaw that had never learned softness, eyes the color of deep water where light stops reaching. He wore no crown that night, but nobody in that room forgot for a single second that he was the king. Lyra knew what the pull meant. Every wolf born under these skies knew what it meant. She did not want it. She could see in his face, in the half-second before he controlled his expression, that he did not want it either. She was nobody. She had known that her whole life without bitterness, the way you know the weather, it simply was. No family name worth speaking at tables like this one. No land, no rank, no history that anyone had bothered to write down. She worked double shifts at the pack clinic, stitching up wolves who looked straight through her when they were healed. She paid her rent on time and kept her opinions to herself, and had built a quiet, manageable life from the leftover pieces that pack society did not want. The bond did not care about any of that. Calum crossed the hall in 12 steps. The crowd parted without being asked. He stopped 2 feet in front of her, and she could feel the bond pulling her toward him like a current, and she planted her feet and did not move. He looked at her for a long time. Then he spoke the old words. Pack tongue. Formal. Final. The rejection cut through the bond like a blade through thread. Lyra felt it go. She stood very still and received it the way she had learned to receive every disappointment in her life. Chin up, hands folded in front of her, expression giving away nothing. She nodded once. She turned around. She walked out of the hall the same way she had walked in, unremarkable, unhurried, as though she had simply decided the party was not for her. She did not cry until she was 3 streets away, alone in the dark, where it did not cost anything. The council offered her a settlement, a modest sum, a travel document. The message underneath both was clear: leave the territory before you become a problem. Lyra took the travel document and left the money on the table. She found work at a rogue settlement called Ashfen, 3 territories east, built at the edge of a pine forest that went on longer than maps agreed. The people there had their own reasons for being somewhere no one was looking. Nobody asked her questions. She did not offer answers. She treated their sick, learned their routines, and after 6 months, she stopped flinching every time she heard a wolf use the formal pack tongue. The elder who ran Ashfen was a woman named Sable, half-blind, small as a bird, and completely unmoved by anyone's grief or rank or story. She decided Lyra was useful within the first week, and put her to work on a project the council back in Draven's territory had declared completed: the cataloging of a pre-war archive that was supposed to have been destroyed. It had not been destroyed. Sable had saved it, box by box, wrapped in oilcloth, carried out of the capital 18 years ago in the back of a supply cart, while soldiers burned the building it had come from. Why? Lyra asked once. Sable looked at her with the one eye that still worked properly. Because someone always comes back for the truth, eventually. The archive was 3 rooms of shelves, floor to ceiling, smelling of dust and old paper, and something faintly sweet that Lyra could never identify. She worked her way through it methodically, afternoons and evenings, cataloging bloodline records and land disputes and territorial agreements from before Calum's father had remade the pack world in his own image. She found the folio on a Thursday, with the lamp oil running low. It was sealed with wax, not Draven's crest, which was the wolf and the crescent. This was older, 4 interlocking rings and a single star. She recognized it from a history text she had read once as a child, the kind of text that got quietly removed from pack libraries in the years after the old king fell. The founding royal crest. She broke the seal carefully. The paper inside was dry and brittle at the edges. The handwriting was precise, annotated in several hands over several decades, the way official documents accumulate witnesses over time. She read it once, quickly, and her mind went very blank. She read it a second time, slowly. Her mother's surname, her mother, who had died when Lyra was 4 and left nothing behind except a first name and a grave marker that had fallen over, sat in the margin of the final page, written in red ink. Beside it, a note in a different hand. Last confirmed heir. Believed dead. Do not search. Lyra sat with that for a long time. The lamp guttered. She got up and trimmed it. She sat back down. Outside, the pine forest made its sound, that low, continuous breathing that she had come to find more comforting than silence. She filed the folio alphabetically under V. She blew out the lamp. She went to bed and lay on her back in the dark staring at the ceiling. She told herself she would not use it. She told herself that, for 11 days. On the 12th day, Calum Draven's spy master arrived in Ashfen. He did not come for her specifically. He came because Sable's archive had been a rumor in certain circles for 18 years, and the king had finally decided the rumor needed verifying. The spy master was thorough and quiet and professional, and he found the folio within 2 hours of starting. He left that night. He did not speak to Lyra at all. She watched him go from the window of the clinic and understood that the quiet life she had built was finished. Calum read the report alone, in the room in the palace, where he did all the reading he did not want witnesses to. Her name, her face, from a sketch his man had made, the folio, the annotation in red, the dates, which, when he did the math, told a story that had been sitting in a sealed archive for decades, while the woman it concerned stitched wounds in a border settlement and asked nothing of anyone. He rejected the last heir of the founding bloodline, publicly, in front of 500 wolves. He had done it in 3 seconds. He read the report 4 times, which was 3 more times than he usually needed. His counsel would tell him to handle it quietly, bring her in, verify the blood, make her an offer she would be foolish to refuse, control the story before anyone else could use it. Rival packs had been circling his borders for 2 years looking for a crack. A living heir, with a stronger ancestral claim than his own, was exactly the kind of crack that started wars. His counsel was not wrong. He went to Ashfen himself anyway. He rode alone, no insignia, leaving before sunrise. He arrived at the settlement as the morning light came through the pines. A woman at the gate told him to wait. He waited. He was still waiting when the clinic door opened and Lyra walked out, wiping her hands on a cloth, and stopped when she saw him. She looked at him the way she had looked at him in the hall the night he rejected her, taking in the information, deciding what to do with it, giving nothing away. She had a small scar at her jaw that had not been there before. She looked like someone who had been building something in the dark and was mildly irritated at the interruption. She did not come toward him. He walked to her. He told her about the folio, about the bloodline, about the political reality of what her existence meant, to his kingdom, and to the packs waiting at its borders. He said all of it clearly, as he said everything, without apology, without decoration, laying out the shape of a problem and the available solutions. He told her there was a place for her at the capital, a title, protection, a role with real authority, not a ceremonial position designed to keep her quiet. She listened to all of it, without interrupting. When he finished, she asked one question. Would you have come here if that folio said someone else's name? He opened his mouth. He closed it again. She nodded once, the same nod she had given him in the hall, and went back inside and closed the door. Hi, Eskin. He came back the next morning. He did not bring anything. He did not ask anything. He sat on the low stone wall across from the clinic in the early cold, and was there when she came out, and was still there when she went back in at midday, and was gone by the time the afternoon shift started. She did not acknowledge him. He came back the morning after that, and the morning after that. On the 5th morning, Sable appeared beside Lyra in the clinic doorway and looked at the king sitting on the wall in the cold, like a man who had forgotten where he was supposed to be. He's going to get sick, Sable said, sitting out there. He is a grown man, Lyra said. He is, Sable agreed. Interesting choice of hobby, though. Lyra handed her a patient file and went back to work. On the 7th morning, Lyra brought him a cup of tea. She set it on the wall beside him and walked back inside without speaking. He drank it. The next morning, she brought 2 cups and sat on the wall 6 feet from him, and they watched the pines until the light changed. He did not ask her again. She did not offer. But something between them had stopped being a wound and started being a scar, which is different. A scar has edges. It is healed over in some places, even if it will never be invisible. 3 weeks later, Lyra sent a letter to Calem's council. Not to him, to them. She had terms. She had written them herself, at the clinic table in the evenings, in her clear and precise handwriting. The bloodline recognition would be public and documented. Her role would carry genuine authority over a specific and agreed territory of her choosing. She would sit on the council as an independent voice, not as a representative of the crown. She would retain the right to leave at any time. She would be addressed correctly at all times by all people regardless of rank. At the bottom, in smaller writing, these are not negotiable. Do not send someone to discuss them. Send a signed agreement, or send nothing. The council met about it for 2 days. Calem sat in his chair at the head of the table and listened to them debate and said nothing. When they finally looked to him, he said, "Sign it." "My lord," his chief advisor said carefully, "she is asking for—" "Sign it," he said again.
"Sign it."
Lyra came back in the first week of the new month. Not with him. She arranged her own transport, packed her own things, said goodbye to Sable, who held her face in both small hands, and looked at her with the working eye for a long moment, and then let her go. She arrived at the capital at dusk, when the city lights were just coming on, and the air had that specific early winter smell of wood smoke and cold stone. Nobody had been told to make anything of her arrival. No banners, no crowd. She had included that in the terms too. A steward she did not know showed her to rooms that had clearly been prepared with care, not the ornate guest suite, but a set of rooms with a window facing east, and a bookshelf, and a writing desk already stocked with paper and ink. Someone had put a small lamp on the desk already lit. She stood in the middle of the room for a moment and breathed. Then she unpacked. In mutter. The formal recognition ceremony was held 6 weeks later. The same hall, different time of year, so the light through the high windows was thin and white instead of warm. 500 wolves again, which she suspected was not a coincidence. She stood at the front of the hall and received the recognition. The words, the document, the formal acknowledgement of a bloodline that had been hidden, and then lost, and then found, in an archive that should have been ash. She stood the way she always stood, chin up, hands still, giving nothing away. Calem stood 1 step behind her and to the left. Nobody in that room missed the geometry of it. Where he stood relative to her said something that no formal word or document could say, and he had chosen it himself, and he did not move from it. After, in the corridor outside, she stopped walking and looked at the window for a moment before she turned to him. "You're going to be very annoying to work with," she said. Something moved in his face. It was a small thing. It might have been the beginning of a smile. "Probably," he said. She walked on. He walked beside her, 1 step back, the same way he had stood in the hall. Not in front, not pulling ahead, not asking to be followed. He just there, in the space she had allowed, at a distance she had set, learning the shape of something new that did not yet have a name, but had edges now, and weight, and the particular quality of things that are built slowly, and therefore tend to last. Outside, winter had settled over the capital properly. The city was quiet in the way cities get quiet when the cold has finally committed. Lyra looked at it through the window at the end of the corridor, and thought about the clinic in Ashfen, and the archive, and a folio sealed with 4 interlocking rings, and all the years of her life that had brought her to a hall she was never supposed to stand in. She had not wanted the bond. She had not wanted any of this. But she had walked into it anyway, on her own terms, with her own name, owing nothing to anyone's rescue. That, she thought, was something she could live with. That was, in fact, everything.